And they call these bozos who conveniently show up to deal with the problem with a fake electronic light show.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. Akira Yoshida is the gift that keeps on giving. This story is absolutely ridiculous. Now we've got Stephen S. DeKnight, the man, the showrunner behind Netflix's Daredevil from quite a few years ago, is calling for C.B. Cebulski's firing over using the pen name. He was so offended about something that happened a decade ago, I believe, and was revealed 4 or 5 years ago that he's not going to work with C.B. Cebulski anymore. Now, me personally, you want to call for C.B. Cebulski's firing, I'm not going to do it. I don't want anyone to lose their job. But if you wanted to call for C.B. Cebulski's job, I would say you have fair grounds on a few events, the things that are happening underneath his leadership. You could just start with letting the Legion of Doofuses, led by Jordan White, who, due to his utter incompetence as the X-Men group editor, has run Jonathan Hickman out of the X-Men office, and we'll never actually get to see Jonathan Hickman's story completed that he started in House of X Powers 10. That seems like it was pretty stupid to let Jordan White do that. But you've also got the other card-carrying member of the Legion of Doofuses, Tom Brevoort, who made Marvel Comics look like an absolute laughingstock on the Disney Plus show 616, where they highlighted, to much glee apparently, the utter incompetence and unprofessionalism of Dan Slott for an entire episode. The man cannot meet deadlines, refuses to meet deadlines, and they have to bring in ghost writers or extra writers to help him complete his work on time. And he puts everyone else behind the 8 ball as far as getting their work done in time, as far as, you know, the artist team, the coloring team, the letters and all that stuff. We'll keep him on for that stuff, even though we look completely stupid. You could even say, hey, let's get rid of old CB for letting Jason Aaron stick on Avengers for too long. That dude has absolutely been destroying the Avengers franchise for at least a year and a half now, right? When's the last time he wrote a good Avengers story? And I want to hear about Heroes Reborn was good. It wasn't good. It was tolerable. People are saying World War She-Hulk is the best thing he's done in years. That'll tell you everything you need to know about Jason Aaron's time as the head guy on Avengers. How is he still there? Because C.B. Cebulski probably doesn't. probably could use a different person in that EIC chair. We could also have the fact that even under C.B. Cebulski, initially he kind of reined it in, but he certainly let his talent run amok once again, trashing fans, being very unprofessional, and basically just running readers off. Not even with their crappy stories; they're just doing it with being themselves. He can't even bring that in. He's actually ramped up Marvel Comics' reliance on events during his stewardship of the main brand in the Western comics industry as far as superheroes. One of the things he said he was going to do when he came into power as the EIC, less reliance on events. That hadn't happened. He lied to us. Of course, you could say this is the one that really, if Marvel or Disney or Marvel or Dan Buckley wanted to get rid of old C.B. Cebulski, you'd say, you know what? You were a talent evaluator. We used to send you around the globe looking for talent for Marvel Comics. Now that you're the EIC, it's clear as can be. You couldn't identify talent if it fell on your face and wiggled. When's the last time C.B. Cebulski brought in somebody that was really talented in Marvel Comics? Maybe Eve Ewing. We don't even know if she's really talented. We just know that writer had a lot of potential. Never fulfilled because apparently Eve Ewing got fed up with Marvel Comics, probably their low page rates and the fact that they wouldn't give her a premier character. And she just said, fuck it, I'm out the door. I got something better to do. He can't evaluate and bring in talent. That's supposed to be his best trait as a leader and a comic book guy. You could say all those reasons and many more. If you have other reasons you think C.B. Cebulski is worthy of being fired, during his time as the Marvel Comics EIC, let me know in the comments section. But any of those, I think, would suffice. Or you could bundle them up if you needed to, like they do on American Pickers. You bundle that bitch up and say, you know what, CB, it's time to show you the door. But this, the Akira Yoshida controversy, is not one of them. This is absolutely ridiculous. So the former Daredevil showrunner, Stephen DeKnight, he's actually writing 2 of the upcoming Wastelander series, has said he's not working with Marvel Comics anymore until C.B. Cebulski is fired for using his pen name. Apparently, he was very, very, very offended. And, if you don't know Stephen DeKnight, not only was he the showrunner behind Daredevil, which at least for 2 seasons was fantastic. He was the creator, head writer, and executive producer of Spartacus. I know a lot of people like that one. He was also part of the team that was developing Jupiter's Legacy before he left the project at Netflix. He's also worked on Smallville, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel. He's written for a couple of those programs. So he is a known commodity within entertainment, and he certainly has done a lot of work transitioning the comic book superhero characters to other mediums, mostly streaming and television. As somebody in a position like he has, you would think that Mr. Stephen S. DeKnight would know that writers, not just comic writers, but writers, have been using pen names forever. Some of the more notable people that you would know, Dr. Seuss. He wasn't a doctor, and his last name wasn't Seuss. Stephen King initially was published under the name Richard Bachman. His actual name was Stephen King. Stan Lee, that's not his real name. It's actually Stan Lieber. Mark Twain, one of the great American authors of all time. Let's bring it back to something more contemporary. J.K. Rowling, the biggest, book franchise that turned into movies and rides and everything. She a billionaire now? Probably a billionaire due to her Harry Potter franchise and her books. She didn't want to use her real name. Want to know why she didn't want to use her real name? She didn't want people to think it was a female writing the book for a story that was mostly geared towards young boys. Turns out that Harry Potter transcended genders and was available to everybody. It didn't matter if you're a boy, girl, kid, or adult. Harry Potter was like it's just something you couldn't stop, right? But she used the name J.K. Rowling, so it would seem like it was likely a male author. Now, I don't want to use J.K. Rowling too much as an example because enough people want to cancel her already. But if we want to go into Stephen DeKnight's world, into the entertainment industry, television and films, streaming, I bet you would be shocked to know this. There are a lot of Asian actors working in America using pen names, or as they would call them in entertainment, stage names. Jackie Chan, not his real name. I bet you'd be shocked to know Awkwafina, not her real name. She really wasn't named after a bottle of water. Lana Condor, not her name. Who else? We got Claudia Kim, not her real name. Chloe Bennett and Minnie Kaling, also not their names. I wonder if Stephen DeKnight, since he's so offended by people using pen names to be more marketable to audiences outside their native countries, is going to go out there and blacklist them as well. These Asian actors that are coming over to the Western Hemisphere and changing up their name a little bit so people will be able to understand what their name is. As someone who's lived in Asia quite a bit, I lived in Korea. I'll bet you'd be shocked to know this. I had Korean friends. Guess what? My buddy Jim, his name wasn't really Jim. He just used the name Jim because he knew I spoke English, and it would be easier to talk as if his name was Jim. Huh. Go figure. Here in the Philippines, a little bit different because obviously there's an enormous amount of Spanish and American influence in the Philippines. You do see a lot of American names. You see a lot of Latino-inspired Spanish names within here, but you also get a lot of native names. Guess what? When they introduce themselves to me, they don't say, my name is Baste. It's like, my name's Bob. Just to make the conversation easier, because certain names in Tagalog don't roll off the tongue off of somebody that's whose native language is English. You know, with that type of phonics and grammar, it just doesn't work quite as well. Same thing in Korea. Same thing everywhere in Asia. I wonder if Mr. DeKnight is gonna stand up for what's right and blacklist all of these other actors that are coming into the Western Hemisphere and changing up their names, so it might be a little bit easier on the reading eyes of the consumer in America, in Europe. I bet you, I just have a feeling that he doesn't have a problem with that. And this is what he had to say. Most of this was on Twitter. I believe all of it actually was on Twitter. This is what he said. This is the first quote. I love working with Marvel, but will not pursue or accept future work until this is resolved. It already was resolved. We'll get to that. I hope other high-profile creatives in comic book biz will follow suit. Oh, canceling. How mighty brave of you, Mr. DeKnight. Mr. DeKnight, who doesn't need this job at Marvel Comics, is probably doing it just as a little side gig, encouraging actual comic book professionals that we know don't make a lot of money to begin with to quit their jobs to make a point to C.B. Cebulski on something that's been known for 5 years now, and it was already dealt with. In fact, he was heavily reprimanded when this news came out in 2017 for using the pen name Akira Yoshida. You know what's funny about that? It's funny. He was reprimanded for using his pen name to write manga in Japan while he was living there. Have you ever seen the manga that Akira Yoshida was writing? Let me put this way. If you look at the cover, there's a logo on it. It's red and white. Starts with an M, it's got a V in the middle, and ends with an L. They're all Marvel comics. Do you think Marvel didn't know that C.B. Cebulski was writing Marvel manga comics for the Japanese audience and using a pen name when he did it? The fact that they reprimanded it is actually pretty hilarious, since it's quite clear that they knew that he was doing it. Everyone just gets so butthurt after the fact. People use pen names all the time. Mr. DeKnight is in Hollywood. I guarantee you, on every production he does, there's someone using a pen name or a stage name. It's absolutely ridiculous. But C.B. Cebulski, the old fat C.B. Cebulski, if he uses a pen name, oof, he's evil. He went on to say on Twitter, there are so many great editors there. Really, are there? Are there? To allow a man who climbed to the top through cultural identity theft to remain in that position is unconscionable. My goodness. When I think of Daredevil, and you think of the lead actor, Charlie Cox, right? He played Daredevil, Matt Murdock. To think that he climbed to the top through, identity theft of a disabled character, while he himself is not disabled, to me is unconscionable. And I think Mr. DeKnight probably shouldn't get to work in Hollywood anymore. He probably should have hired, a blind actor to play Matt Murdock. It's only, it would have been the right thing to do for the character. Why are we getting an able-bodied person to play the main character, Matt Murdock, when there are disabled blind actors out there that would have loved the part of Matt Murdock, Daredevil? And I think it's unconscionable that Stephen DeKnight, with the power that he had, didn't go out there and support the disabled community. It's crazy, isn't it? That this, like the hypocrisy just running through this. The fact that pen names have been used forever. The fact that there are so many stage names in Hollywood of people transitioning from other cultures into Western culture, so people could you would think if anyone could understand the idea of using a pen name while you're transitioning to another culture, Stephen DeKnight. And then we also know that he showrun Daredevil, and he did not put a disabled actor in the lead character role when he should have. There's some more hypocrisy on this. The reason that this was all brought up, and apparently I think he was added, So somebody was trying to stir up trouble. Guess who that person stirring up trouble was? It was Harley Quinn, Eat, Bang, Kill tour writer T. Franklin. You probably don't know that name because they're not actually like a big name comic book writer. But if you've been following the channel, it might feel a little bit familiar to you because I just talked about this creator not that long ago. I believe she's black, gay, and disabled herself. And people were harassing her after she wrote Poison Ivy and depicted that character as bisexual in her comic book rather than gay. And she received harassment for weeks, claimed to be crying, claimed to be depressed over all the harassment that was being fed at her over something she probably feels like she didn't deserve. She probably thought she was doing a good job. Yet, as soon as T. Franklin, the writer, had an opportunity to go put a spotlight on somebody else for something they didn't disagree with, they jumped all over it, trying to get a man fired. Well, I guess it's okay when you're some straight white fat man, huh? It's different. Just the people here is just insane. I read the Screen Rant article. There's this great line here, and this is a quote from the article. Screen Rant is such a dumpster fire. Quote, "The criticism lobbed his way from the Asian community and beyond was fair. And despite calls to fire him, Cebulski managed to convince Marvel his past problematic actions were a mistake." I don't really remember the Asian community. I'm sure there were a couple here or there, but I remember it was mostly like straight white activist people. I'll call them woke. The woke community was condemning him. It wasn't like wholesale, like all of Asia was like, oh my gosh, that guy needs to be fired. They were like, yeah, you probably should use a pen name like that if you're going to release comic books in Japan. Might make it easier for people to go in and buy it and sample it. If it says Cebulski on the front, I'm be like, who the hell is Cebulski? What's a Cebulski? I don't even know what that is. So this is insane. As someone who's lived in Asia quite a few years now, they don't care about this stuff for the most part. The only Asians I've ever seen that care about stuff like this are culturally American. They went to college at like USC or something, or UC Berkeley. Asians in Japan, Korea, Philippines, China, for the most part, could give a fuck. And mostly they make fun of lame ass white people that are so guilty about being white that they make big deals about stuff like this. Just in my experience, I'm sure there's a handful here or there, but for the most part, they could give two shits. It literally means nothing to them. But we shall see if Mr. Cebulski survives this. Now, he's certainly done some things to worth being fired over, but the use of the pen name Akira Yoshida is not one of them. This is so stupid, and this was absolutely planted. People knew about this for years before the information actually came out in that stupid Bleeding Cool article. And it was leaked to Rich Johnston because he had been named the EIC, and they wanted to cut his dick off at the first moment they could and basically embarrass him, get him reprimanded, even though there is no way in hell that Marvel didn't know he was using that pen name when they were released. It literally says Marvel on the comics and Yoshida. Who do you think signed the contracts? Do you think he was signing the contracts as Akira Yoshida? Of course it said C.B. Cebulski. How stupid do we think these people at Marvel are? I think they're really stupid, but they're not that stupid. And I don't think you guys are either. This is just ridiculous. It's lame as hell. And there are real issues at Marvel Comics with C.B. Cebulski worth talking about. Things that have happened under his reign that are unacceptable. And we are being sidelined and sidetracked by this stupid bullshit that no one that reads comics or cares about the medium or anyone from Japan actually gives a shit about. At least that's the way I see it. There you go. The Akira Yoshida controversy apparently will not die. Mr. DeKnight, I cannot wait for you to come out against Jackie Chan, Aquafina, Lana Condor, Claudia Kim, Chloe Bennett, and Minnie Kaling for using pseudonyms, stage names, pen names, whatever you want to call them, in order to access the North American market and portray themselves a little bit different through their name than they really are. Because I think this is the fight worth fighting. God.